I am Maria Rosa Vaquerizo. I am the CEO of the Andean American Associations, and today it's a pleasure to welcome all of you to today's program, President Lasso, First Year Review and Outlook. This program has been hosted and organized by the Ecuadorian American Association. We have today with us a fabulous group of speakers. I want to welcome Aparicio Caicedo from the Presidency of the Republic of Ecuador, Alejandro Arreaza from Barclays, New York, Janet Inostroza, journalist, director of Visionaria, and moderator Todd Martinez, co-head of the Americas Fitch Ratings. Thank you very much to our wonderful panelists and to all of you for your participation. We thank for your interest, and we have had about 170 registrants for this event. Few words about the Ecuadorian American Association is celebrating this year the 90th anniversary. And this Chamber of Commerce was founded in 1932, becoming the very first Chamber of Commerce for Ecuador in the US. Our association has hosted hundreds of programs with a constant emphasis on promoting Ecuador and to strengthen our binational relationships. We want to welcome a distinguished group of participants and investors this afternoon. Arthur Barnes of Deltec Asset Management, member of the board of directors of the Ecuadorian American Association. Ana Blanco, vice president of the Colombian American Association. Ambassador Michael Skoll, president of the Venezuelan American Association. Gonzalo Rodriguez Matos from Hogan Lovells. Patrice Guiol from Alpax, Isaac Gilinski of Vespertina, Ramiro Crespo of Analytical Securities, Juan Pablo Cuesta, Trade Commissioner in New York. Also, let me welcome major financial institutions as Sobanca, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, UBS, and Wells Fargo, among others. We also have several organizations and governments. The multinational organizations are United Nations. We have the World Bank with us, the Institute of International Finance, the Inter-American Development Bank. We have the alternate executive director, Bernardo Acosta, International Labor Organization, the US State Department, Embassy of Ecuador, and US Embassy among our participants. We also have the rating agencies, Fitch Ratings and Standard & Poor's Global. On the media side, we have Financial Times, we have Michael Stott, the Latin American editor, we have Latin Finance, Ecuador News, and Zinux. The academia, we have Columbia University, Iowa State, and UCLA, among others. So it's a fantastic group of audience, and I want to welcome each and every one of you. Thank you so much for your interest in our programs. And please note that the speakers' remarks are their own views. As far as questions during the conference, you have a Q&A tab at the bottom, and you can use that Q&A to send questions throughout the conference. And by the end, we allow about 20 minutes, and our moderator will he will handle the questions with the speakers. So please feel free to send your questions throughout the conference. And now let me continue. It's a pleasure for me to introduce the president of the Ecuadorian American Association, Juana Caicedo Selinger. She's a senior vice president at UBS Financial Services in New York. And so Juanita, the floor is yours. Está muted.
Now I'm on mute. Welcome to this important program that we believe will help us understand the current and future situation of Ecuador. Thank you to our distinguished panelists and to you all. It is my pleasure to introduce briefly our speakers and moderator. May refer to our invitation for further information about them. Aparicio Caicedo is currently one of President Lasso's advisors. He has a PhD in law from the University of Navarra, is the executive director of Ecuador Libre y director of the Center for Studies and Philosophy, Politics, and Economics at the University of the Americas. He has been a visitor scholar at the University of California at Los Angeles, an advisor to the presidency of the Basque Parliament in Spain. He has written several books, such as The New Deal del Comercio Global and Noche Larga No Liberal, Realidad detrás del mito populista. He has a PhD in law from the University of Navarra, which I mentioned before. Alejandro Arraza is a Latin American economist at Barclays. Based in New York, he is responsible for the firm's macroeconomic coverage of the Andean and Central American and Caribbean economies. From 2004 to 2010, he was an economist at Bancaribe, the sixth largest bank in Venezuela, which is associated with Scotiabank. He received a master's degree in public administration from Columbia University with a concentration in economic policy. He also holds a master's degree in economics from Universidad Católica Andrés Bello in Venezuela, where he also received his bachelor's degree in economics. Yanei Nostroza is an investigative journalist from Ecuador whose work focuses on the exposure of government corruption. She was the anchor of a morning news program, La Mañana de 24 Hours, and was the creator and anchor of the long-running investigative news program, 30 Plus on Teleamazon for more than a decade. Janet is currently co-founder and director of the digital channel Visionarias, which tackles Ecuador political and economic news, as well as international issues. She has received 3 international and 11 national awards, including the International Press Freedom Award of the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists. Todd Martinez is a senior director and co-head of the Americas and Fitch Ratings Sovereign Group, responsible for overseeing analysis and rating of sovereign credits in the Americas. Before joining Fitch in 2014, Todd served as an economist at the Institute of International Finance in Washington, D.C., conducting analysis of country-specific and regional macroeconomic developments in Latin America. Todd earned his master's degrees in economics and Latin American studies from Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. He earned a bachelor's degree in international affairs from the University of Denver. So I welcome this very distinguished panelist. And now, Todd, I give you to start the discussion of this program. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Juana Maria Rosa, and thanks to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and especially to be joined by 3 esteemed panelists. Before I turn the floor over to them, just a few thoughts from us on Ecuador. I think in a region where there's not a lot of positive stories at the moment, at least from the perspective of sovereign ratings, Ecuador is somewhere where there is some cautious optimism. I think, especially in external finances, we've seen a dramatic improvement. We're no longer talking about existential risk to dollarization. In the public finances, we've seen a big improvement. And while the oil price is a big part of that, we do see a government that's trying to do other things to make sure that this is a more durable fiscal improvement that could survive a potential fall in the oil price. And then perhaps the weak link of the story so far is growth. Even though it's been better than expected a year ago, it's still one of the economies that's recovering more slowly from the pandemic. And we do see a government that does have a transformative agenda in mind to help Ecuador grow faster, but not getting a lot of help from the legislature in that endeavor. So I think that last point is a good segue into our first panelist, Aparicio Caicedo. Aparicio, I'm very eager to hear what you have to say as someone with firsthand knowledge of the Lasso government, how you think the first year of the administration went, what your plans are for the rest of the term, and what your political strategy is for dealing with a legislature that thus far has not been particularly cooperative.
Hey, thanks, Todd. Well, first of all, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for the invitations, Maria Rosa, Alexandra. We know each other a long time. Thank you for the invitation. Todd, Juana, Alejandro, and Janet, I'm really glad to share this with you. Let's go straight to the point. I'm a consejero de gobierno for the President of the Republic. This is our first year in power. Our government came from, as you know, from a period of turbulence which lasted around 15 years since the Correa government began until his successor, which later he had a distance with him, but until his successor finished his period in last year. So this is a year we have encountered a country which is pretty much changed during the last 15 years on a vision, under a vision, which puts the state, puts the government in front of everything, every part of the economy. I mean, we have been 15 years when the private initiative has been marginalized in laws, regulations, and politically. So we have our first thing, we have to change that. Also, it has been 15 years where the management of the finances has been really bad for the country, since we were spending all the money which came from oil and getting in debt in with really high interest with China and another source of. So what we found there is that financially this country was totally a mess. Moreover, we have to face the challenge of the COVID, which had a terrible management before us, corruption, lack of management, and we have to spend a lot of money in vaccinating in 100 days, no less than 9 million people from scratch. There was nothing there. So we have to build the logistics, get the vaccines, get the money. So it was really hard at the beginning. And before we get to the question about the Congress, I would like to go through briefly on what we have accomplished during this year. The economy, as you mentioned, brings right now more confidence to the entrepreneurs, with international financiers, banks all over the world. We have created more than 187 new jobs this first year. The economy, even though maybe if you compare it with other cases, it's not the best, but the forecast was way worse than it was right now. According to the international organism, we were supposed to be growing at the 2.8%. And now we had a 4.20%, which is way better than it was forecast to be. The international reserve right now stand at 8.3 billions, cutting May 6, 2022. On May 2021, a year ago, we only had $5.9 billion in the international reserve. The fiscal deficit, which is I think people doesn't realize, was in $7.6 billion. We have come to a point when we only have a 2.3 of fiscal deficit in billions. I'm talking in billions. That's a $5.6 billion cut in deficit, which is really huge. We have reached a technical level agreement with the IMF. Sorry, okay. We have also, there you go. We have receiving like more than 5 billions in private investments. We have operated a reduction in tariffs of more than 600 tariff items, we are planning and negotiating 10 trade agreements for the 2025. The objective of this is to reach them with different countries and trade groups in Asia, Europe, and America. Among them, Mexico. We are really close to finish that negotiation to get into the Pacific Alliance. The increase in oil production is really important. It is expected to conclude this year with a daily average as of December of 583,000 barrels of oil compared to the 477,000 barrels of oil in 2021. We have started a really big program against chronic childhood malnutrition, and this year, 25,000 pregnant women will benefit from the voucher we're giving them to feed correctly the kids, which is the clue to have a better future. Tourism. We have had 170 million in tourists spending. The first 3 holidays of 2022, it was a huge increase on tourism. We have a really aggressive program to bring internet to all the country. So we have increased 84 districts with 4G coverage in 10 months. We're expecting to have the full map of the Ecuador covered by the end of this government. And there are many other data I could give you, but it will take ages just to tell you all. However, as Todd mentioned, I mean, economically, we have right now confidence in the future. People are seeing how we're doing things. We don't have any more problems in terms of excessive regulations. We're cutting the excessive regulations. We're planning to do another tariff cut to increase the economy. And in the last tax reform, the government, the president was given the power to cut some important taxes, such as impuesto a la salida de divisas, ICE, which is impuestos a los consumos especiales, which are really distortive taxes which are everywhere in our economy. We also have a really aggressive policy in terms of alianza público-privada, which is all the infrastructures, all the oil industry, mining. Right now, we're in the process of negotiating new contracts to have a lot of investment. We're calculating a portfolio of alianzas públicos-privadas. I don't know how do you say that in English, Todd?
Public-private partnership.
Okay, public-private partnership. We have a portfolio of around 30,000 millions, 30 billions in terms of what I mean in the US, in mining, construction, in public infrastructure, roads, oil, and you name it. So to go to your question, yeah, we have some political challenge right now. From the beginning, we knew the Asamblea Nacional, the Congress will be a problem. That's what we know because of the numbers. It's simply mathematics. If you see how the Asamblea right now is conformated, you will see that we don't have a consolidated majority there. However, as you have seen, with the problem, all the problems we have had, we have managed to pass the most important law in order to arrange finances and put the house in order, as we say, which was the first law we approved. It was a big tax reform with a lot of finance reforms that gave us the power to change things financially, economically in the first year. We didn't have that luck with the second reform we proposed to the government. But that bill is a kind of bill that will be if approved, it will be like way better for us, but it's not. Alejandro, I think. Okay, it will be way better for us, but it's not indispensable. It's not. I don't know. So indispensable. I'm supposed to know to say this.
Indispensable, yeah.
Indispensable. I mean, we can carry on with the economy growing and the investment even without the law, and we are doing all the regulatory reforms, but that don't need to go through the Asamblea General, through the Congress, in order to get that. Right now, the relation with the Congress is tense. I won't deny that. But our main reforms, our main projects, do not depend on that relation. We can we can go through the rest of the 3 years without having to go to the Congress again and having a new bill passed through. So that's a good part. It's not ideal, obviously. It's not ideal, but we have to get through. We change our leaderships in terms of the relation with the Asamblea, el Ministro de Gobierno. We have a new Minister of Government, I don't know how do you call it, the guy in charge of getting the relation. Things are going better, way better, not perfect, way better, and we are going through, I think, a way better relation with the Congress. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's peacefully, absolutely, but we have managed to apagar los incendios, to cease fires in some fronts. So the most important fronts, and we have stability right now. We know we are not going to apply the muerte cruzada, which was the constitutional power of the government to dissolve the Congress. We have that in the Constitution, and call to new elections.
Yeah,
presidency and congressional elections. We are not in that point. We were in that point 3 months before.
Okay.
But right now we have reached a point where the president told this in the State of the Union address, as you will call it, and 2 weeks ago. So we are not in that point. We're in a point where it's not going to be easy, but we're going to be have a minimum of a stabilization.
Okay, great. Yeah, and a few questions are coming through specifically on these political issues and some of the things in the government's agenda that can be achieved without Congress. We'll save those for the Q&A, but I wanted to turn the floor over to Alejandro from Barclays. Alejandro, maybe you could give us your view from as an analyst here in New York of how the government's agenda is shaping up. How much progress do you see on the part of the government, and is Ecuador one of the countries that's emerging as a bright spot in a region that's mostly filled with somewhat negative stories? What's your view?
Thank you, Todd, for the introduction. Yes, I totally agree with you that Ecuador right now is one of the few bright spots that we have in Latin America, in a context in which particularly the political situation across the region has been very challenging, and we have been facing headwinds in different aspects. No? In the case of Ecuador is coming from a complicated situation in the last 2 years. I used to say that in 2020, practically all the stars aligned against the country. So you had the shock from the pandemic, the blow up of the oil pipelines, and then the debt restructuring process. Although at the end had a positive result, it was also a part of the challenges that the country faced. No, and now what we are seeing is exactly the opposite. No, it looks like all the stars now align in favor of Ecuador. I think the country is facing a very favorable backdrop. We have had a significant recovery in oil prices. That is clearly the main export of the country, and it's something that is helping. We have had the consolidation of a reform process that started with the previous administration, and that President Lasso has continued implementing. And now, well, we also have a market-friendly administration that is really committed with the reform process, that has been obviously as I said at the beginning, a bright spot in a region where actually what we are seeing is a movement in the opposite direction. So geopolitically, Ecuador has become a key country in the region, and that's also helping with improvement in the situation that we are having. No? So I would like to split probably this first year of President Lasso in three parts. I think the first part was the process of the let's say of facing the challenges from the pandemic, where, as Aparicio mentioned before, there was a tremendous success with the vaccination process, and that opened the door to see a faster recovery of the economy than what the market consensus was expecting last year. No? From there, I think the administration moved into a reform process where we also had some positive surprises in the middle of a challenging political environment where the government does not have a strong support in Congress. The administration was able to pass a tax reform. I have to say that Ecuador, together with Colombia, I think are the only two countries in Latin America that in the middle of a pandemic has been able to pass a tax reform. And that's clearly contributing to advance in the fiscal consolidation process that the country has been experiencing. You know? So this year, Ecuador will be probably an exemption in the region. I think Ecuador is the only country in Latin America that will be running this year probably a fiscal surplus in a region where most of the countries are running still large fiscal deficits, are in the middle of adjustment process coming from the pandemic. Ecuador has been leading in balancing the fiscal accounts. No, the trend seems to be supportive. I think still for this year, the country has the possibility of outperforming the expectations in terms of economic growth. We're estimating that GDP could grow around 4%. Still could benefit from the rebound from last year, and we are seeing signals of still a strong domestic demand. I was last week in Quito, and it's clearly impressive how still the domestic demand is moving. We have meetings with the private sector. The local banks are seeing a fast increase in their credit, not only for consumption, but also for investments in some sectors of the economy. When you look at non-oil exports, so export of shrimp, even in the agricultural sector that in some cases has been affected by the war in Ukraine, is performing relatively well. Banana has been able to shift from the Russian market that was an important market into other markets. Probably the flour market is the one that still remains relatively suffering more the impact of the war. But in general, I think in the middle of a global context of increasing geopolitical tension, actually Ecuador could be seen as a winner in the sense that it's a net oil exporter and it's benefiting from the increase in commodity prices. No? I think now we're entering a third stage in which probably the key factor is investment. No? And when I say investment, that means both private and public investment. I think Ecuador now has the opportunity to become a market that will attract significant flows of investment. In the short term, I think probably the biggest opportunities are likely to be in the oil and mining sector, where the country has a clear competitive advantage. They already have an experience with successful projects like Fruta del Norte and Mirador that today are producing more than $2 billion in mining exports. There is an opportunity to more than double those exports in the next 3 to 4 years. I think the challenge is to build a bridge from now to the time where these projects will probably mature, no? And there is where probably public investment could play an important role in sustaining the recovery of the economy over the coming years, while these private sector investments start to yield results. No, I think that's something that could also help with containing some of the political pressures that the government has been experiencing. However, my impression is that most of the issues that have been happening in the political front are more noise than real risk. At least from the economic perspective, I think the impact of these events seems to be relatively contained. As Aparicio was mentioning, the most important economic reforms that were part of the IMF program were already approved. So even if the government does not have the support of the Congress right now, it does not seem to really need of the legislature to continue advancing with the economic agenda. So probably there, the ideal situation would be to find some minimum level of political consensus to reduce the level of political noise and bring some stability. Hopefully, the new Minister of Government, Jimenez, that has been appointed, advances in the negotiations that have been doing with the opposition. That's clearly one of the sources of challenges that still are there, and we cannot totally dismiss that the risk that could imply. But in my impression, those risks for now are relatively contained. I think Ecuador is in a position to continue outperforming expectations.
Great. Thank you so much, Alejandro. And before going to the last panelist, just a reminder to anyone, you can leave your questions through the Q&A chat function, and we'll get to those at the end. So yes, we've heard a perspective from within the government. We've heard a perspective from the outside, from the economic community. So I'm eager to hear what you have to say, Janet, as a member of Ecuadorian civil society. You know, I think from the outside, it looks like there's been a lot of progress on Ecuador in terms of its economic problems, namely the fiscal deficit, but that sort of progress doesn't always necessarily translate into popular support for a president. So, you know, what's the view of Ecuadorian society? Is this administration making good on some of the promises it made to society and responding to the demands they have?
Thank you, Todd, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you and to have the opportunity to share my vision and analysis about the first year of President Guillermo Lasso administration. I am Janet Inostroza, a journalist with 30 years of experience and of following the history of this country with a critical and reflective vision, regardless the power of the day. My vision about the reality is made as a journalist who investigates, looks at data, debates, and analyzes opposing positions and consumes daily news. And also as a citizen who lives to the daily Ecuador and who is convinced that it is a wonderful country with a lot to offer. This has been a year of political crisis, but being in crisis is part of our democratic history. We have had governments of the right, the left, and the center parties, and all of them have ruled in the middle of a crisis. The crisis does not consider the interest of a country that needs consensus to move forward and pace that the world demands of us. Instead, they are reduced to the interests of the members of political parties, or to be more precise, to the interests of the owners of the political parties. Our democratic system is made for boycott and chaos. The laws and the Constitution itself contemplate alternatives to create institutional crisis. Today, for example, the main judicial and control authorities are in the hands of officials in charge. I am talking about the Judiciary Council, the Comptroller General of State, the Ombudsman Office, the Public Defender's Office, and the National Electoral Council. The laws allow us to sleep with a president of the National Assembly, and in the other day, we wake up with a different president in charge of this institution. Anyone can file a complaint against the president of the National Court of Justice, so that the Judiciary Council suspends him or her from office. It also allows anyone to file an habeas corpus anywhere in the country in favor of a former vice president with 2 executed sentences, allowing a judge who came out of nowhere to set him free. The Constitution predicts that the President of the Republic holds a red button in his hands with which he can dissolve the National Assembly and send himself home, provoking a kind of a state self-coup. Beyond asking what the causes of the crisis are, we have to ask who is winning with this crisis. And the answer will integrate a list of names who are always behind the power, who not only have great interests, but great pending issues with the Ecuadorian justice, seeking to avoid being held accountable. Ecuador is a country that lives in free fall and never hits bottom. But although it is difficult to understand, Ecuadorians always find a way to get ahead. And if we had the commitment of politicians, we would go faster. But despite the circumstances today, geopolitics place us in a privileged spot in the region. Without going into details for reasons of time, political and economic analysis places us in a better place than Colombia, Peru, Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, where uncertainty is growing, precisely in hand with the turns that politics will take or have taken in those countries. Today, we are the best option in the region for an investor. With great opportunities in the mining industry, for example, projections indicate that we have so much copper under the ground that our exports can become as large as those of Chile. The oil industry and the agro industry is also provide great opportunities. With that context, I'm going to tell you about the first year of Guillermo Lasso's administration, who came to power thanks to the anti-Correa vote, or a majority that thinks that did not want the 21st century socialism to return to power. This was an advantage that President Lasso did not know how to capitalize on, and the opposition has been gaining ground. Lasso also started his administration with a social crisis as a result of the pandemic, launching a vaccination campaign that was extremely successful, but also he also failed to capitalize on. The vaccination was a test of President Lasso's leadership, but it was a light that was turned on and went out in less than a year. And decisions have been made and important things have been achieved in economic matters, but the people do not know about them, do not perceive them, and do not feel their influence on their day-to-day. For example, on the macroeconomic figures say that this year economic growth will be 4.3%, 1 point higher than what was expected. The budget deficit was significantly reduced. The country risk decreased. The dollar remains strong as a strong currency. Unemployment fell by 1 point. Despite the problems caused by the pandemic and now by the war between Russia and Ukraine, exports of bananas, shrimp, broccoli, flowers, among other products, marked record numbers. Shrimp, for example, increased its exports by 75%, and tuna and fish exports grew by 37%. The private sector's sales increased by 10% during the first year of Lasso's government. Tax collection grew. It was expected to raise to raise $14 billion, but 16 billion will be raised. Deposit in banks also grew by 10% versus the previous year, and international reserves grew by 3 billion versus the previous year. Guillermo Lasso government has two serious problems. He failed in his political management. He did not achieve the necessary consensuses in the National Assembly, and important projects were not approved to solve the most urgent problems in the country, insecurity and unemployment. His second problem is that he does not communicate. He does not have a government communication strategy, and what is not communicated does not exist. So when a government does not communicate, negative factors are imposed, such as employment, which even though it has decreased, is still high. The rise in prices of basic necessities as a result of the war, the news about a lack of control in security matters, the shortage of medicines in public hospitals, the lack of resources to repair schools after abandonment in the pandemic, the problems of governance in the crisis in institutions, among others. Achieving consensuses is in a country where politicians confuse agreements with the corrupt distribution of public institutions is a complex task. The range of maneuvering is narrow, but not all doors are closed. The change depends on the political strategy, which until today has not been seen. And it's not been seen by a team with the political ability to negotiate without implying letting certain groups profit from public money, not transacting governance in exchange for impunity. What I'm saying is this. Why I am saying this? From the first day of government, the Union for Hope Coalition, or UNES in Spanish, from the Correísta line, President Correa, established as a condition for talks the creation of a parliamentary truth commission to review the judicial rulings against several of its leaders involved or sentenced for corruption cases. They raise the possibility that these cases are of political persecution and that their leaders have been unjustly sentenced and imprisoned. But who would be part of this truth commission and how independent would its conclusions be? One of the objectives of the Correísmo was about to be fulfilled without the needed to create this controversial commission. This is the release of the former Vice President Jorge Glass, sentenced for illicit association and bribery. They did so by manipulating the law and abusing a legal remedy created to prevent torture or the forced disappearance of persons in prisons. Glass achieved his freedom despite having 2 sentences executed against him and a third to be ratified. But he had turned to prison after an appeal from a local court that found that everything he did was illegal. Now, the defense of former Vice President Glass decided to start again all the procedure to obtain an habeas corpus in his favor once more and offer to comply with the process to the letter so that there are not problems again. My intuition tells me that former Vice President Jorge Glass will soon be freedom definitively. Everything indicates that this is a political negotiation with the government, but we don't know in exchange for what. Mm-hmm. The Social Christian Party, in the other hand, seeks to take the control of the Citizen Participation Council and Social Control, a government organization created to elect the supervisory authorities. They need to influence the election of the new Comptroller General of State, an institution that has opened several processes for abuse of state resources involving powerful people who always win in the crisis and who don't want to go to jail or nor give back what they have stolen. What are the challenges for this new year? The government thinking in the government that has started a countdown. So it's urgent to start an efficient and strategic political management. It is a government that has to restructure its political team to achieve agreements for the benefit of the majority in this country. Insecurity is the new COVID. It should be an opportunity to bring society together to face an evil that is attacking all of us and go to the bottom of the problem and not just stay halfway. And finally, communication. What is not communicated does not exist. If the government does not understand that communicating strategically, however little or much they do, the perception of inaction will continue to win. Therefore, confidence and popularity will continue to plummet. In conclusion for you, and I'm finishing with this, condition of chaos make it difficult for rules to be changed. We have a very rigid labor code, but a population eager for work. We are an uncompetitive country, but even in these conditions, many companies have came here to bet on this country and have won. We are a rich country. Anything that you want to do, you can do it in Ecuador. We have such a large potential for tourism, agriculture, mining, and petroleum. Our Amazon hides the deepest secrets of the medicine, and we are not only the largest exporters of bananas, we have the best banana in the world, and we have a shrimp industry that has broken scams and is still room to grow. Our privileged climate allows to grow the biggest, strongest, and most varied colorful roses on the world. And Ecuadorian lives in chaos, but if there is one thing we agree on, is that dollarization gives us a monetary stability and that none of the neighboring countries can offer. And finally, I can just say that Ecuador needs you. We have big opportunities here, and we need you to generate jobs and opportunities, and you can make maybe all the politician slogans are reality, like bread, roof, and employment by President León Febres Cordero, 1984-1988. We advance homeland by President Rafael Correa, the government of all by President Lenin Moreno, or finally, the Ecuador of opportunities that President Guillermo Lasso repeats to us today. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you so much, Janet. And a lot of good questions are coming through. So I think I'll try to lump them together and ask each of the panelists questions that pertain to them. And I'll ask each of you to be brief so that everyone has a chance to answer these. But perhaps starting with you, Aparicio, I think Janet really clearly delineated a lot of the kind of the longstanding institutional and political challenges that Ecuador faces. So I guess from this government's first year, are there any good lessons learned about how to face some of these challenges going forward? A specific question we got is the the change in the leadership of the National Assembly with a new leader. Do you think that's something that stands to improve, overcome the tensions that have been existing so far, and any specific plans for dealing with the rising issues regarding security? To the extent you can be brief on those complex issues, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, totally. Due to the confirmation of the Congress, of the Asamblea General, it's gonna be always tense. We cannot avoid reality. I mean, it's gonna be always tense. It's gonna be like negotiation, each step at a time. Whether Sakisela is in the presidency or anyone else, I don't think it will make much difference, because all will depend on our capacity to talk to every political party which is represented at the General Assembly or Congress. So what's what we're going to do? We're going to talk with all of them, come to terms in like really transparent negotiations, when you won't see anything beyond the law or morality. So I mean, in this kind of environment, everybody's gonna start legends of what we offer or what we don't offer, and with what we're seeing right now. Because But the only way we can get through is, one, do not depend anymore on the General Assembly. We don't have to send, we have to work in terms of laws with what we got. And that's perfectly feasible. And in other hand, we have to talk with the Assembly, which if you could tell me one failure of us this year, it was the lack of real conversation with the political actors in the Assembly. And we have to go through that, do it, and we're doing it right now, because the change of leadership in the Ministerio de Gobierno started a totally new period, when a periodo, I don't know, etapa, where we're gonna see much more of open dialogue. That's why we're in.
Great. Thank you so much. And question for you, Alejandro. You expressed a pretty optimistic view on Ecuador's economic outlook, especially relative to where it's come from. And I certainly share a lot of those points. I guess one question I have, and that someone else had, is why is Ecuador's risk premium remain so high? What is the remaining skepticism on the part of the market that's meant that Ecuador still has such a high country risk, and especially despite these high oil prices? What's the missing ingredient?
Yeah. I think everything is relative. No? When you compare Ecuador to how so Ecuador's peers in the market has performed, Ecuador has clearly done much better. No? So if you look at Ecuador's current yields are around 9.5%. So some of the countries that the market perceives as Ecuador peers, like Angola or Gabon, Ghana, that are also oil exporters, have seen a significant widening of their spreads in the last few months. No, so on a relative basis, Ecuador has performed much better than most of these countries. No, however, as you said, the yields that the market demands for Ecuador are still very high. The country risk premium is still relatively high, and that's mainly associated with the story of the country. I think clearly President Lasso and his administration has been doing a good job, but for the market, it's difficult to remember. To forget the multiple episodes of defaults that the country has had in its history. So cleaning that track record takes time. So there needs to be a continuity in the policies and a sustained improvement in order for the market to see this process as a structural improvement and not just something transitory.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess two questions for you, Janet. I mean, you described a backdrop of institutional gridlock and chaos is a word you used. You also described, the tremendous potential Ecuador has in a lot of areas, including mining. And so someone wanted to know specifically, how do you see the prospects for development of the mining sector? Is this institutional chaos and political gridlock is something that could prevent development in that area? And then the other one is on the security issue you mentioned. Do you see this as an issue where kind of these gridlocked political class, it's such an important issue that you see them potentially coming together? Or is this something that further stokes the divisions we're already seeing?
Okay, first, I want to be, I'm sorry for my English, terrible English. I haven't practiced in a long time. And it's a sensible subject. So I prefer to answer in Spanish. I don't know if that's a problem.
No hay problema.
Okay. So, no soy una experta, pero he seguido muy de cerca el tema de la minería en el Ecuador. Hay grandes perspectivas y grandes oportunidades y apenas una pequeña parte del Ecuador que está concesionado al sector minero legal. Y hay grandes oportunidades de inversión ahí, algunas ya se han puesto sobre la mesa, pero se puede se puede explotar muchísimo más ese sector. Yo lo veo con mejores y más grandes perspectivas que el petróleo, que el mismo petróleo. Pero claro, ahí yo pienso que el gobierno y la misma industria pueden hacer un gran trabajo en torno a delinear acuerdos o contratos, contratos directos con este sector, en donde se pueda de alguna manera resguardar los intereses de las industrias mineras, pero también de los ecuatorianos. Ahora, ustedes ven, estamos en la Cumbre de las Américas y hay una preocupación enorme por la migración, pero también hay una preocupación internacional y mundial por el medio ambiente. Y eso es algo que tiene que estar previsto dentro de estos acuerdos que se puedan firmar con la industria minera. Entonces, ahí hay grandes perspectivas, pero a quienes estén interesados en la industria minera o en cualquier industria, tengo que decirles que para venir a trabajar en el Ecuador hay que tener un ojo político, hay que tener y tomar en cuenta qué es lo que pasa en la política, principalmente para no asustarse, porque como les digo, aquí toda la vida hemos vivido en crisis, llevamos muchos años viviendo en crisis, toda nuestra vida e historia democrática hemos vivido en crisis y es parte de nuestro día a día. Entonces muchas veces vienen los inversionistas y claro, a la primera crisis tenemos un presidente de la asamblea, al otro día ya no está. Asusta porque pues la seguridad jurídica está en la mitad y tienen razón de asustarse, pero es parte de nuestra historia. Cuando uno empieza a conocer cómo se maneja, cómo es el manejo político en nuestro país, entonces se da cuenta que uno puede venir, invertir, ganar y trabajar pues en medio de ciertos sobresaltos, pero lo puede hacer. Es parte de nuestro día a día y de nuestra historia. Entonces, eso como en esa parte. Y la parte de inseguridad, yo creo que la parte de inseguridad, estoy muy pendiente de lo que sucede en la Cumbre de las Américas. Me parece que el tema de seguridad atraviesa, es un tema internacional, es un tema que nos afecta absolutamente a todos los países de la región y del mundo. Está influida por el narcotráfico, es un tema que ha crecido en el Ecuador, no se lo puede negar, la violencia ha crecido en el Ecuador, hace falta que en ese sentido el gobierno en ese sentido tome decisiones y marque un norte para poder saber qué es lo que hay que hacer, hacia dónde vamos y en qué podemos contribuir todos los demás. Y de esa manera poder ayudar a controlar lo que, digamos, en las calles y en el día a día está sucediendo. Pero sí hay que estar conscientes de que el narcotráfico no es un tema que el Ecuador lo puede resolver solo. Estamos en un punto estratégico y el Ecuador no lo puede resolver solo. Entonces, eso implica un acuerdo internacional para poder luchar contra este mal, en donde pues se pueden analizar muchísimas cosas, desde el apoyo logístico para poder preparar mejor a las Fuerzas Armadas o dotar de mejores armas y vehículos y cosas a las Fuerzas Armadas, pero pues también hay que pensar en estrategias internacionales, ¿no? Y aquí en mis análisis diarios que hacemos, se habla todos los días y muchas veces de la necesidad de que alguien plantee de una vez y por todas la necesidad de, por ejemplo, legalizar las drogas, que es un tema polémico, yo lo sé, y quizás dé para otra conversación, pero es un tema que debe estar sobre la mesa, ¿no? Para poder controlar todo esto.
Perfecto. And a few more questions are coming through, but I think we'll close the event. So I just want to thank my panelists. Alejandro, thanks for your great analysis. Aparicio, thanks for all your hard work. Y Janet, gracias por su análisis y bueno, también por su valentía en un país donde la libertad de prensa necesita sus campeones. So I'll turn the floor over to Juana, and once again, my thanks to the panelists and for everyone who attended.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you very much to our panelists. The program was excellent, and I think the way it was analyzed, what's going on in Ecuador, is going to bring more questions, obviously. And I think our people that is attending this and listen to this program can have a better idea of what is going to happen in the future in Ecuador. And Aparicio has the government side. We have the possibility of, I don't know what the future is going to be. Alejandro, the economic side, and Janet, the political side. I appreciate this very much. And I think it's a very clear picture for people that didn't have an idea what was really happening in Ecuador. And also I want to thank our staff, and especially want to thank Alexandra Vaquerizo, which is our program director, for this excellent program that she put together. I'm going to give it to Maria Rosa for the final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Juana, and thank you so much to our panelists, Aparicio y Todd. It was a wonderful moderating, and Janet y Alejandro. Así que wonderful. It was a very important panel, and I think we need to do a follow-up. There's so many more questions. Okay, so for today, I just want to thank everyone for participating and reminding you that the Ecuadorian American Association is a non-for-profit organization, and if you are interested in becoming a member, just reply to the invitation of today. Have a great afternoon, and thank you so much to everyone. Good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.